conquer and we're going to take some. Is that understood? Yes, sir. That's what we're going to do, sweethearts. We are going to go and get some. All right, people, on the ready line. Are you me? Yeah! Are you me? Yeah! What are you? What are you?
Autism Acceptance Month is a good time to recognize the talents, contributions, and diversity within the autism community. Sign up and read informative articles for free about autism and other disabilities at www.epmagazine.com.
Monotony. It comes in all shapes and sizes. Dull, tedious, just plain boring. But what is this? A contender, perhaps? Something unboring by the looks of it. Jabs right at dull, an uppercut to tedium, something that keeps you on your toes, keeps your head on a swivel, a knockout punch to your old, boring workouts. Welcome to Fight Camp.
Oscar Mike Radio is a proud podcast partner of Reach Across America Radio, heard every Thursday at 11 a.m. and Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. They're also big supporters of the nonprofit I Got Your Six, Two Lives at Once. And with every wreath you sponsor through Oscar Mike Radio, $5 goes back to this great organization dedicated to making a difference in the lives of veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders battling PTSD. Two Lives at Once pairs these brave men and women together with dogs rescued from kill shelters. In this way, two lives are saved at the same time by saving each other. Donate now. Go to reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio to help. That's reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio.
I remember a time when I was in a not so good place, and these games and these activities and being able to come and have the camaraderie that we have here, it makes me feel like I'm not alone. There are people here that have been through what I've been through. It makes me feel like I don't know, I'm part of something great.
Just let yourself go. Give it a try.
How's it going?
Going well. It's that new guy energy.
Oh, he's back. That's the fourth time he's done that.
Is he peeking or probing?
Speaking with serious intent to probe.
Alpha 2, we might have guys starting to move on our position.
Copy, we're getting a buildup of activity here too.
Yeah, I definitely see weapons at this point.
Yeah, we have definite massing.
We're seeing activity converging to your north and south.
This is Frogman 6 Romeo. We need evac at our last known position. We have severely wounded. Who's the severely wounded? It's not you. Is it me? Who is it? No, it's not you. No, it isn't.
Copy 1, we're in contact 2.
You coming to you or you coming to us?
Stand by. We'll let you know when we're inbound.
Let's move!
Here's the plan.
EA 5 minutes, over.
The scouts are gonna lead us out, and I'm bringing up the rear. Pop smoke. Smoke out. We are all coming back.
OP1, they are en route to you.
3 minutes out! 3 minutes! Eyes on me and only me. Has anyone looked at you? Claymore, rock me, dude. 2 minutes out! 2 minutes!
Where are you guys?
Look for the blood and the smoke.
Multiple bad guys trying to get to our position.
Inbound! Inbound! Find cover!
1 minute out!
We have enemy on our building and all surrounding buildings.
Roger that. Stand by. Going hot.
You gotta get ready, man. This is gonna hurt.
On my count. 1, 2, 3.
Hello and welcome again to Oscar Mike Radio. My name is Travis, Marine Corps veteran and your host. Oscar Mike Radio is co-produced by Sinister One Productions. What's your podcast doing? I want to thank my sponsor, Joyce Asek of Asek Real Estate, and my supporters, Cason Shaving Company, Exceptional Parent Magazine, and Fight Camp. Be your strongest combination. And what a combination do I have for you today? I meet people, I have their people on shows, PR guys, friends, neighbors, family, and I was told about, get this folks, 2 guys who see a problem. 2 guys who see a problem because they make stuff in America. So they're 2 cool dudes, check, making stuff in America, check, and then they want to have their stuff ready for veterans. When I got the information about Ben and Alex and True Health, I almost couldn't believe it. I thought that when you went to like the dentist or the doctor's office and they put on the gloves and other stuff, that was automatically made in the United States. I just assumed that we can, in this country that makes all this very cool stuff like the Mustang and the Harley Davidson and aircraft and the Apache and my favorite, my Hawk missile right there, that we can certainly make personal protective equipment. But I found out, Ben, that's not the case. I couldn't believe it. So before we go anywhere else, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you all got into making PPE here in the U.S. under True Health, please.
Yeah. So Alex and myself, my co-founder Alex Soak, and myself, we had worked together on other ventures in the past, and this was an opportunity that kind of just landed on my desk. And so I was working in the consumer packaged goods industry during the COVID timeframe and saw all of this transition and chaos and challenges for American sourcing that, led to us really needing to up our consumption of PPE. And so what's incredible with that is that in seeing that up, that change in our demand curve and how much we needed internally as a country, we didn't have an ability to supply it. And so we were now at the mercy of everyone internationally. So when we stepped into this, it was really about understanding that right now we're making under 2% of our national demand of PPE domestically. Crazy numbers.
So wait a minute. So break this down Marine Corps style for me, even though I'm an air winger. So let's just say for every 100 pairs of, let's just say gloves or mask, America only makes 2. Is that?
Yeah.
Is that
correct?
That's unbelievable. But okay, I believe you because I remember the COVID days and we nothing was made in the US anymore at that point. So, okay. So you saw a need to make stuff in the United States so we're not so dependent on foreign entities.
Yeah, Alex and I have a couple of things that unify our business ethos, and that one of those things is we are big time believers in the United States. My business partner Alex is an immigrant to the US, and so we appreciate the country maybe in a way that some founders don't. And from our perspective, it's always been about a few different major components. One is being able to source things that are manufactured in the United States. And just to clarify, I mean, we're not a producer. We work with domestic producers, and we'll get into a little bit of that later. But we're hyper focused on what it means to support the country from the inside, but also to innovate, and then to be very transparent with our consuming populace, because as we all know, our consuming populace is dependent upon products they can trust. And if they can't trust the product, they can't trust the origin, they can't trust the quality, now we have a disconnect. Now we have a risk to our consuming populace. Now we have potentially a national security risk that ties into it, which is terrifying, hopefully, for everyone involved. And we also have stripped away opportunities from our American workers. And those are the workers that we've relied upon for decades, and all the way back to World War II. I mean, think of what a different world we would be living in if we weren't able to pivot production and domestically produce the products that we needed to survive as a country. That would be a tremendously different world. But today we're in that phase.
Before we go further into the business and what surrounds that, I am curious. You mentioned that, and I read about the True Health story, this love for the United States, even though you didn't serve the military. Where did that love for our country come from? Because in some circles, expressing that love is seen, as not a good thing. But where does that come from for you personally, Ben?
Well, I think, for me personally, the biggest piece is I'm a lover of freedom.
Yep.
And so in appreciating that, I've done a lot of study on governmental systems, what has worked throughout the world and what hasn't. And I am, as a result of that, in the fact that I prioritize freedom over other things, it really led me to this great love for how America operates, with the fundamental ethos being freedom, looking at our Constitution. For me, it's been that I've had friends and family that, military veterans, but really at my core, it has been around just loving the freedom that we're offered in our country. For Alex, he also has family members that are, veterans, military, etc., and very close friends also. And we've seen just how the country as a whole has, at least to our view, not lived up to the debt that we owe our heroes. And that's been something that's been kind of a galvanizing thing for us, to say, how can we provide opportunities? What are those types of opportunities that are needed? And what really makes a difference in a veteran's life, or in in someone who has served the country in their highest capacity? To us, it's always been about, I've heard quotes that we're always one generation away from losing our freedoms. And I believe that. I've watched that over the last 20 years, in my adult life, and seen some trends that were alarming in that direction. So for me, it was, we can't protect our freedoms if we can't protect the populace that votes on these things, and that keeps them alive, and that is aligned to what the country is doing for them, and on their behalf.
Understood. you see this need during COVID, and it was a need. And I agree with you. It was very unsettling to realize, like, wow, you didn't realize just how dependent we are, not only on China, but other foreign countries for almost everything. It was just really like we had a wake up call, and you all decided to start True Health together. And you mentioned that you don't produce. So explain the whole PPE process to us and how that works, please.
Yeah. So from if we back up for a second and look at the macro view of it, it was recognized by our country during the COVID timeframe that we had this massive gap in production. And when I'm talking about 2% of PPE, I'm specifically talking to nitrile gloves because those are the most commonly used PPE device apparatus, if you want to call it that. And they're ubiquitous. So they realized that this was an issue. Then they create a multi-billion-dollar Make PPE in America Act, invest tons and tons of money against this to start manufacturing in the US. But now we're faced with a chicken and egg problem because, as in many industries, we have an incredible pressure downward in price that comes from Asia. And that is super cheap imports, low quality imports, again, of questionable origin, but they are so cheap that the purchasing arms of organizations have really become very dependent upon that price point. And so what we decided to do is we realized that there was a massive gap. Even though there's been this investment, we're still only at less than 2% of our domestic production being produced, inside the US. Our production needs, I should say, being produced inside the US. And then also tied to that, there's this gap in terms of demand. And so the demand it leans into a few different components. One of those pieces is education, but that education has to come to the populace and to the purchasers, right? So that's kind of where we looked at and said, okay, there's multiple manufacturers in the US. We're going to work with them. And we're going to focus on creating a demand signal that is unavoidable. And so that demand signal then needs to be sent through so that their production can change, so that they can increase their production lines, et cetera, so that the next time we have a global or pandemic or any type of national security event that maybe could be disease related, could be any number of things, could be trade related, could be based on trading lanes that are now blocked up, could be based on a ton of different things, conflicts, et cetera. Anything that really causes a disruption in that supply chain, we're ready for it. And that's the push of, we can't do it overnight. We can't do it alone, but over the course of time, we can start to create a groundswell of information, informed consuming populace, people who are frontline workers that we're protecting, and we care greatly about protecting the nurses, doctors, EMTs, police, fire, et cetera, all the people who depend on these products, that groundswell can start to influence what do the purchasing decisions look like, and therefore what demand signal does that send, and then lead to more production. So we're seeing ourselves in that niche to make sure that it's not just about manufacturers trying to make this happen. It's also about those of us who believe in building brands and building something that's meaningful to the American populace.
So chicken and the egg, you have to have the egg and the chicken, but they have to know about each other to make this work.
Right.
Okay. Because again, most Americans, myself included, thought, well, of course we can make our own gloves. And so I wouldn't even think to buy from an American company or look at where it's made. And there is the aspect, okay, yeah, I'm going to pay a little bit more for this than I am for the Asian product. Is the quality really that markedly different in the foreign glove versus the U.S. glove? Can you explain that for me?
Yeah, it's tremendously different. So the
Okay.
first piece is contamination. And so in terms of contamination, there's been a couple of studies done, one in particular that took a look at how many of our imported gloves were contaminated on a percentage basis across, I think, 26 suppliers, something like that. And what they found is almost 50%. So for base math, let's call it half of the imported gloves are contaminated in some way, shape, or form, meaning bacterial, could be viral, but typically you're talking about bacterial. In some cases, something as dangerous as, human fecal material being detectable, or the bacteria that is related to that.
Ben, you're for real on this. I'm not calling you. I'm not saying you're not accurate, but I don't like going to hospitals in the first place. So you're saying that, let's just use the marine math here. For every 100 imported, at least 45 to 55 of them have contamination built right in.
Yep, based on the studies, that's what we're seeing. So incredible concern there.
Yeah, like because and just going at the macro level, expanding the ring a little bit, but you are more liable to get sicker and die in a hospital than not be in a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody wonders why. Well, if the PPE is contaminated, the human body is going to get contaminated, Ben.
Bingo. This is
my Wizard of Oz moment, Ben.
If you want to look at it as a Wizard of Oz moment or a Matrix red pill, blue pill moment, it's these are those moments of understanding. I mean, when you look back at disease history throughout the Western world, and you look at when hygiene standards came into effect, we attribute the drop in disease in so many different studies, articles, et cetera, to a number of different factors. And some of this is revisionist history, to be honest. But when we look at something like this and we say, okay, we know that good hygiene prevents disease or prevents infection. And so that should be the first place we look. We should know. And in part, it's because when you think about production methods overseas, we don't know what the water source is. That's number one. And water is one of the key materials that you need to be able to manufacture nitrile gloves.
Hold on. Complete noob here, but I wouldn't think water would be a main component. But okay, why is that?
Well, it's really about the way that the production lines work. So, when our primary supplier in the U.S., for example, they are pulling water from an aquifer. So we're talking about the purest, water source that you can have. And that's really the difference. Anything that's touching a non-sterilized PPE device or glove, for example, is going to impart something on it or, be used as intended. So if there's a water wash on a glove, all of a sudden you have a contamination potential there. For us, it's really about making sure that that's as trustworthy as possible. No one can guarantee something 100% of the time, but it is really about creating that trust. And then on top of that, even beyond contamination, the other component is glove failure. So when you look at internationally sourced gloves, the thicknesses vary dramatically across the glove itself. So breakage rates increase. Well, breakage is a problem if that is supposed to be a barrier, right? On top of that, when you think about the shipment of these gloves from overseas, typically they're sitting in an ocean liner. Well, an ocean liner has high temperatures during summertime, especially. And those high temperatures are exacerbated when something's sitting in a metal box on a ship underneath the sun for 30 days before it ever gets to our shores. The difference between that and a couple of days on a train getting delivered is immense. So not only is it the initial production concern, and that generating some failures and contamination, et cetera, but then when you get into transport, now all of a sudden you have a separate issue, which is there's degradation. Most of these gloves are designed to be well underneath the temperature ranges that you experience with those overseas transports. So that is a tremendous concern, or should be a tremendous concern for a lot of folks.
It would seem that if you know all this, paying an extra 5 cents per glove because it's a human life involved would be an easy upcharge in price to have that kind of security for your patients. Also, it's human life we're talking about here. It would seem.
Yeah, it would seem to me. I mean, we spend so much money on what do the pharmaceuticals look like that we're giving to people? What do the medicines look like? What's the standard of care? And then to neglect something as simple as, well, maybe the thing that we touch our patients with should probably be safe, would be a great call, right?
You're putting all this stuff together to make True Health, and the name is fitting. What happened when you started seeing, your idea come to fruition, and the fact that you have now this chain, this pipeline of this American source product? What happened to your customers? What happened to you? How did that look when you got it together?
Yeah, so I think we've had a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of feedback, right? When we talk to frontline folks that have tried and used an American made glove, they love it. They love the fact that they don't have to waste a ton of time putting on a glove that breaks immediately and then having to put another one on, et cetera, wasting all of their time. They also like the fact that they are able to trust it as well. On the purchasing side, it's a little more dicey because, again, we're talking about the pressure of a person who's led, who's really conducted their job in a certain way for a number of years, and they're dealing with looking at cycling their numbers from last year of what their purchasing cost, and so comparing again the cheap imports relative to a domestic produced glove. That's where more of the pushback has come. So it's really been understanding those specific dynamics. For us, it's more about working with some of the smaller folks, getting that word out. But then also within that is communicating that even despite some of the low prices at the high level purchasing end at super macro volumes and huge consumption data, when you look at when you look at smaller consumption numbers, a lot of those prices are still elevated from COVID. So at the smaller organization side, a lot of folks are still paying, $8, $9 a box for a glove that, might have been imported at 90 cents, right? So they're a very different.
The markup is that much?
Oh, on so many of them, yeah. So that's really been how we've looked at it, which is smaller organizations that actually care about their employees, that actually care about their clients, that actually care about their patients. Those organizations are more interested in having something that they can trust, in part because we're not running those sorts of markups. We are operating on very thin margins to make sure that we can get the product to market.
If a box of gloves wholesale is 90 cents, you would have to ship like 1 million to make it worth your while to do it. What I'm trying to get at, Ben, is how do the foreign companies make any money off this if they're selling it for 90 cents wholesale? I mean, you would have to sell literally 1 million boxes to make it worth it.
Yeah, I think that's it's an excellent question. It's one that I don't have all the answers to. I think there are likely some political motivations in some of these things. I wouldn't go as far as to say got any confirmation on that, but if you take an Occam's razor approach to it and say,
the simplest answer is the best. Yes.
What is the most likely answer here? Then there's probably some political reasons for this piece. The other dynamic is, when COVID hit, China went from, so still most of our gloves in the US are produced in Malaysia. But the challenge is that a huge proportion of them shifted to China almost overnight. So China went from being 1%, couple percent of the glove market to 25% almost overnight in COVID. They were able to step up and convert their production facilities to that. So I think at a big piece, it's understanding, especially when you look at China, what are they able to do from a pivoting standpoint in terms of manufacturing flexibility that we can't do in the US. Obviously we have tons of different regulations in part to keep everyone safe. So we have red tape that, needs to be cut through, and we don't necessarily have visibility to what the red tape is elsewhere that was just completely avoided or bypassed or any of those things. And so it really turns into it's a pure volume game internationally. And for us, domestically, it's more about how can we direct these to the highest value target clients, because their actions impact more people's public health, well-being, et cetera, versus some of the other industries where the cheapest glove wins.
I would have to, I want to ask, have you approached the Veterans Administration about sourcing gloves?
So we haven't directly. One of our suppliers has. Well, actually, several of our suppliers have. But so when it comes to direct work with them, they tend to want to work directly with the manufacturer, and I totally respect that. I think it's the most responsible thing for us as a country to make sure that happens. And those are relatively simple for a manufacturer to have those conversations, because again, they're singular point of contact sort of conversations versus trying to get things out to market with tons of points of contact and numerous decision makers and all the complexities.
You have this aspect. I think one of the things that really kind of said, okay, the third checkbox was, it's evident from your website and your business documents that I was able to read, is there is this component where you want to take this market segment and make it in the US, which this has been a whole education. Ben, let me tell you, I won't go to the doctor's office. I might have to get a box of your gloves and bring them with me to the doctor's office. I'm serious. But there seemed to be this real, like from the ground level part of your corporate entity culture, what have you, that you made it clear that you want veterans to work with you all, work for you all, and build careers with True Health. Where did that come from, and what's that actually mean? What are you trying to do for veterans with True Health?
Yeah, that's a great question. From our inception, we really wanted to make sure that we were supporting American business. Within that, the passion for veterans and providing opportunities was a big deal. And so we asked ourselves a question of what is most meaningful for a veteran. A lot of these veterans, they're coming back, they're working a job, they have certain opportunities, they have certain skills, but a lot of those skills might not be how to build a business, or they may not be really focused in a particular vertical that just dovetails nicely into a company that's distributing and marketing, an American-made product. So what we asked ourselves is, what's the best opportunity we could provide? So the thought process there was, let's look at this from a distributorship perspective, from an entrepreneurial perspective, but with a different angle. And so not just saying, hey, we're open to bringing on distributors, but saying we care enough about veterans that here's what we're willing to do. We're willing to help you set up your entity. We're willing to help coach you on the tools and systems that you need to be able to operate something, and to give you an unlimited opportunity that's predicated on how hard you're willing to work. And I think that to me, outside of freedom, is one of the most glorious things about America. And that is, it is the land of opportunity. So we wanted to focus on it from an opportunity perspective, as opposed to plugging someone into a role that, one, they might not be trained in, two, they might not be interested in doing long term, but something that gave them the opportunity to build something for themselves and to participate in what we believe is a mission that impacts the country. So there's a lot of folks that have come back from serving, from conversations I've had and my friends have had. Sometimes there's a lack or disillusionment or a lack of direction that comes with having spent so much of your time dedicated towards a mission, and knowing intimately what that mission was, and now coming back and saying, well, what is my purpose and what should I be doing? Giving people a mission to attach onto is a big piece of this. And that's why we focused on a distributorship setup, as opposed to setting up other employment programs and those types of things.
Is a distributorship where me, the veteran, works with you all and then builds like a client list of people in who might want the gloves, work with them to get them, set up to receive the gloves, understand their feedback? Is that what a distributorship is?
Yeah. So it's really all about that. It's developing that relationship, coming with the client list, and then allowing us to do the back end components to make that all work, and relatively seamless as far as that distributor and client are concerned.
Nice. And you have a mentorship or pathway program to take a veteran who, like for me, Ben, I was a Hawk missile radar operator / maintainer. There wasn't a lot of opportunity for that out in the civilian world. I had to relearn, retool. You could take someone like me, and if I'm going to work, when to pound the pavement, press the flesh, you could take me from zero to being really very successful.
Yeah, that's the whole focus, is taking and adding the skills that are missing. So, when it comes to like you were talking about, retooling and reskilling, it's giving those tools and that knowledge from a reskill perspective, tied into sales and tied into marketing and tied into relationship management and tied into operations, that can coach someone up to where they're able to be successful.
How many veterans do you have working with you now?
Right now, we're actually in search of our first. So this is a program that we stood up fairly recently. And the whole idea here was just to say, let's get this off the ground. And so for the first few folks that we're going to be working with, the level of attention will be considerably higher, than at any point in time in the future, right? We're always going to take a great interest and offer awesome support, but in terms of really getting in the weeds with people out of the gate, that's what the opportunity is that we're offering right now. We can stand them up. We can be right in the trenches with them, coaching them every step of the way.
Okay. Fair enough. But the opportunity is there. You make it very clear on the True Health website, and I'll have that link in the Oscar Mike Radio show post, that the opportunity is there. You'd love to work with veterans. You articulate your why well. As this goes on, because we're about halfway through 2025 when this releases, what's the future look like for your company, what you're trying to do with American manufacturing, Ben?
Yeah, so for us, we're not going to stay limited to PPE in terms of American manufacturing. We view this as a bigger goal, and that goal is, bringing production and bringing our dependencies towards domestic producers. And so our focus is still in the health space. So it's really going to be focused against continued PPE, expansion of product lines in that case, but also focused on things that are, for example, safe disinfectants and cleaners that are domestically produced. Things like hypochlorous acid. And so one example of this is we've connected with a revolutionary hypochlorous acid producer in the U.S.
New question here. Yeah. What is that's not hypochloric acid. What's the acid? What's it do?
Yeah, hypochlorous. So we can think about it as primarily a disinfectant. There's so many uses for it. It's gentle enough. It's almost pH neutral, gentle enough to be used on the skin. It can be used to treat a number of different skin ailments, but it's also fundamentally, and what it's been used for is cleaning, disinfecting over the course of its lifetime. Now, the problem with it historically has been that you had to use it right away. Shelf life was almost non-existent. That's where we've partnered with somebody who's figured out the shelf life equation. So now you can have a tremendously safe product that doesn't have all the downsides of pretty much everything else that's out there. No quats, no issues with all the other caustic, materials and chemicals. No issues in terms of a crazy pH that's hyperacidic or hyperalkaline that's going to hurt the surface that you're working on or potentially damage you as you're utilizing it. And so we're thinking about those types of spaces that are really oriented around what's the safety. Again, back to the initial part of the conversation of public health, national security. The products that fit in that from a cleaning perspective, from a protection perspective, those are where we're going to live primarily, and the focus is always going to be on domestic production.
You could say that this is not necessarily a true military veteran topic for my show, but I think there is this aspect where, during COVID, we found out just how unprepared we were. And you're right. Go back to World War II, Ford, Dodge, Chevrolet, all the Pontiac, all those companies were able to churn out tanks and planes because we had the manufacturing power right there. And we couldn't with COVID. I mean, we were heavily dependent, and I think it woke a lot of people up. And then I do like the veteran aspect. There's a lot of veterans that I talk to and have served with myself who are like, it's hard finding that purpose and that opportunity after service when you've done an MOS that does not transfer over. So, hey, if you're looking for a new opportunity, I'll have the link in the Oscar Mike Radio Show post for True Health. Would definitely like to have you back on, Ben, as time progresses to understand how your company has matured, understand how this veteran offering has worked out, and how other veterans can help other veterans align with what you're trying to do.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Travis. I really appreciate it.
Well, there you have it, folks. Sometimes it just takes somebody who, and this has been a theme with Oscar Mike Radio this year, where the civilian, sees a need and fills it and makes that available to veterans. I want to thank Ben from True Health for coming on and talking with me. We'll stay in touch for more coming down the road. And as we say in Oscar Mike Radio, we're mission in flight. Thank you very much.
The biggest fear Gold Star families have that their child will be forgotten.
We need to never forget freedom wasn't free.
It's the fact that they give us the life we have now. We should remember them and give thanks to them.
If I can be a part of something today that's going to make the surviving family of any of these veterans, these heroes, feel better tomorrow, then it's worth it.
That one wreath symbolizes one family that was able to smile because of the generous donations.
To sponsor a wreath and honor a veteran, visit wreathsacrossamerica.org.
Thank you for listening and watching Oscar Mike Radio, where our active duty service members and veterans are in action and the mission is in flight. Oscar Mike Radio is an oversized load, Co-Sinister One production. If you are a veteran or know a veteran who needs help, please dial 988 and press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Line.